You have been watching an NBC News special report on the breaking news just into us. New York AG Letitia James indicted late today by a federal grand jury on a bank fraud charge, three sources confirming to NBC News. The president publicly calling for his Justice Department appointees to bring charges against her. Remember, over 24 hours ago, former FBI Director James Comey pleaded charges of making a false statement and obstruction. We've got team coverage on this. Kelly O'Donnell is standing by for us. I want to start, though, with Michelle Sindor, who's posted up near the White House. We're also getting a statement in here on social media from New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who says New York State AG James for her integrity. She is known for her independence and her relentless fight for justice. What we're seeing today is nothing less than the weaponization of the Justice Department to punish those who hold the powerful accountable. Yamiche, walk us through potentially who could feasibly be next here, knowing that Letitia James was, in fact, on the list put out there by the president himself.
Well, you're right to point out that New York Attorney General Letitia James was on the list of political enemies that President Trump explicitly told the Attorney General that he wanted her to target and go after for prosecution. So the president has been very clear he wants to do that. He's also named other people like Adam Schiff, who is a senator representing California. He's also talked about Christopher Wray, who's a former FBI director. There's, of course, James Comey, who's already been indicted. So the president has a number of people. You have the web up there. He has a long list of people that he has grievances with the president, and he has made no secret of the fact that he believes that his Department of Justice, and he does view it as his Department of Justice, should be really an arm to continue to go after people and to be an arm for his grievances. It is striking but not surprising to see Letitia James be targeted in this way because the president has been so negative and so attacking her. Now, we did reach out to the White House to try to get comment on this indictment of Letitia James for bank fraud. So far, the White House is not commenting. We are looking and monitoring the president's social media because that's where we often see the president posting online, posting what his reaction is. I can tell you, as someone who's covered President Trump for a long time, that he is someone who will likely be praising this indictment of Letitia James. He did the same thing under James Comey when James Comey was indicted, saying that he was a dirty cop, that he was corrupt. I imagine he's going to be using similar words whenever he does start to react to Letitia James being indicted. All of this, of course, is coming. As you said, you have the New York governor who's reacting, saying that Letitia James has integrity. But I should also tell you that I was looking online, and there's a Republican Senator, John Cornyn, who is saying that no one is above the law, and it's essentially praising this indictment. So the political messaging has already started here.
Yamiche, I actually want to bring up this Truth Social post from the president from just a couple of months ago, in fact, naming Letitia James, if we can, for folks. And he says, what about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia as well? They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times, in parentheses, over nothing. Justice must be served now. It seems as if he kind of went up against the similar roadblocks as they did with James Comey indictment, essentially with the former appointee of the Eastern District of Virginia. They said there maybe wasn't enough evidence to, in fact, indict Letitia James, as they said with James Comey. But now we are seeing this.
That's right. And just maybe 2 weeks ago, I talked to the president on the phone, and he told me in an exclusive interview that he also expected the DOJ was already investigating Christopher Wray, who was a former FBI director, someone who the president has also been very critical of. So the president is making no secret of the fact that he has names on a list and that he wants his DOJ to specifically go after them. When it comes to Letitia James, we all know, of course, that she had that successful civil case against President Trump related to a number of things in his real estate and family business. So Letitia James has been very clear that she was someone who was going to go after President Trump and try to hold him accountable. And now he is essentially possibly striking back, not, of course, saying that he was the one who was directing the DOJ to indict her, but he is someone who, of course, as you put up, has really said that she should be prosecuted, that he wants to see her prosecuted. So as we continue to wait for the president's reaction here with the White House not commenting, I still think that I think it's a pretty good guess that the president is going to be celebrating this whenever he does react here.
Kelly O'Donnell, walk us through what is in this indictment. We know a special counsel was appointed just a couple of months ago by the Attorney General, and now this.
Well, the indictment itself has not been posted, has not been publicly available to us yet. So our reporting is based on sources. The document has not yet become available. But I am told that Judge Jamar Walker, a Biden appointee, has been assigned to this case. So if we just take a look at the specifics, months of investigation, this originated from the Federal Finance Housing Agency and Bill Pulte, who was definitely trying to, I don't want to assign motive there. He was examining records looking for material that could have a criminal referral. And that is what took place here. They reviewed records related to mortgage application associated with Letitia James. In that, many pages, of course, for anyone who's ever gotten a mortgage, it's a lengthy process. There was a document within many pages that included a check mark, if you will, some kind of identification of saying that this mortgage related to a primary residence. We now understand that this was a 2023 home purchase for her niece, Letitia James' niece, in the Norfolk, Virginia area. That's why it is in the Eastern District of Virginia when she is the statewide elected Attorney General for New York. So this document then presents the challenge. Criminal referral was made. Her counsel, Abby Lowell, a well-known lawyer, reviewed this and said that it was not worth the paper that it was on. It was, as he said, 3 pages of stale, threadbare allegations. That's how her team presented this. Now we move forward a couple of months, and this is presented to a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia. Lindsay Halligan, most recently the president's deputy staff secretary, a White House aide, formerly an insurance lawyer, never a prosecutor. She is now in the role of acting U.S. attorney. She presented this material to the grand jury as we understand it. Again, all things that happen in a grand jury are secret. They return what's known as a true bill, identifying one count related to bank fraud. Then a judge approves that. And now we begin with a process where Letitia James, instead of being the chief law enforcement officer in the state of New York, is now herself a defendant in the District of Eastern Virginia at the federal level. So it is a criminal case. It is a political situation. It is a reflection of the moment we are in, where the president's list of adversaries, as he sees them and frequently talks about them, now 2 very prominent ones, have been indicted and will have to face some process of this Justice Department and the federal district court and the process there, which does rely on jurors. It does rely on grand jurors who sit and listen to evidence, and then she'll have to have an opportunity to defend herself. We've reached out for comment. We have not received it yet, but a lot of incremental steps along here, and we expect that we'll hear something from her official office or her lawyers in the short term. But the document itself has not been made available to us yet.
Kelly, I mentioned to Yamiche that it seemed as if the former U.S. Attorney of the Eastern District of Virginia felt as if there wasn't enough evidence to indict Letitia James as they thought about James Comey as well. But this appointee now, Lindsay Halligan, obviously taking this to the grand jury. There was reports at the time during the indictment of James Comey that she took it alone. She presented the evidence to the grand jury by herself. Do we have any reporting to indicate the same thing happened here?
Not specifically, but one could see that that may have taken place, but we don't have specific information about that in terms of what happened in the grand jury. Perhaps we can get those details, but it would not be surprising. And this is a limited case in terms of the facts that are involved. So she may have chosen to present it. There may have been witnesses who were a part of the presentation. We just don't know those details. And grand juries, by their nature, are always intended to be a secret process so that when they do not bring forward an indictment, that material can't be used to harm someone's reputation. It's meant to fortify how the system works, so we don't know those details. It may become knowable as we hear more about the process after the fact.
Well, certainly the story is still developing. Yamiche Alcindor, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you both. Appreciate it. We're also asking some big questions here that are going to be happening soon with the White House and their military push into American cities. We want to start with Portland. Judges seem to be okay with allowing service members to put boots on the ground there as early as next week. Then there's Chicago. The city's on edge there as a judge could decide in just the next few hours if National Guard troops can start deploying there as soon as possible. We're already seeing protests as well, tensions on the street hitting new highs, and new video of National Guard troops carrying in equipment outside an ICE detention facility in the area. Plus Memphis getting ready to see the National Guard on the ground there as well. Want to bring in Shaq Brewster, who's on the ground for us in Broadview, Illinois. Shaq, walk us through exactly what you've been seeing on the ground there with the President Guard.
Well, honestly, from the outside, from being outside of the gate, outside of this perimeter, there is no visual distinction from what we saw the past couple of days. National Guard, we're told, are here, are deployed at this site, but there's no way that we are able to really know outside of some members with camouflage in the distance that are walking about. But the real focus has been on what's been taking place downtown, and that's where a judge, and we know both sides will be back in front of a judge in about 15 minutes, but a judge has been hearing that Illinois lawsuit from Illinois and the city of Chicago looking to block the deployment of the National Guard here. You have the state and the city saying there's nothing here that warrants the use of a National Guard. There's no rebellion. There's no active riots that are taking place in the city. But the federal government saying, look, there have been attacks and threats against federal immigration officials and officers, that the Guard will be here to protect federal property and those federal officers. During the hearing earlier today, I'll tell you, the judge was very skeptical and really grilled the federal government and their attorneys over that account that there is a rebellion or something that warrants the Guard being here. The judge almost giving them somewhat of an assignment, telling the federal government to come back with her with some more information, some questions that she had, including why the Guard is apparently going to be sent to a federal court tomorrow morning, and that is something that she will review when they get back in session in about 10 or so minutes.
We're also hearing the government's potentially looking at buying buildings in Chicago and Portland for the National Guard troops to post out at, along with immigration operations to be ongoing there. How long are they planning on staying? Is this per the norm that we've been seeing as kind of these ICE raids have been happening across the country?
Yeah, it's a lot of unanswered questions. When you talk about the Guard, the time period that was placed on their deployment, on their activation, was 60 days. But that is something that can be extended, as we have seen, was extended in L.A., was extended in Washington, D.C. But I think, the bigger picture, if we just step back a little bit, when you talk about the fact that you had the Secretary of Homeland Security saying in that cabinet meeting that they're looking at buying more property in the Chicago area, in the Portland area, this shows, and this is a clear signal from the federal government, that they are not letting up, that they are going to continue to ramp up their operations. Kristi Noem also saying that more federal agents will be coming to the Chicago area in the next days and weeks. So they're making it clear that despite the opposition of local officials, despite the protests that we've been seeing, they will continue their push to not only have those stepped up immigration operations and those raids that we've been seeing, but also the military presence in these American cities.
Shaq Brewster, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to Washington now, Capitol Hill specifically, where earlier today 7 was not a lucky number for Congress after the Senate for the 7th time voted down a pair of bills that could have ended the government shutdown. Republicans, Democrats staying the course here, with both sides of the aisle focused more on rhetoric than actually on deal making, with Republicans voicing major outrage today over a comment Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck apparently made to Punchbowl News on Wednesday night, telling the outlet that when it comes to the shutdown stretching on, quote, every day gets better for us. The comment is really firing up Republicans. Vice President Vance calling the comment, quote, a vile sentiment. Schumer appearing to defend himself, though.
Every day that Republicans refuse to negotiate to end this shutdown, the worse it gets for Americans, and the clearer it becomes who's fighting for them. Each day, our case to fix health care and end the shutdown gets better and better, stronger and stronger, because families are opening their letters, showing how high their premiums will climb.
All right, let's bring in NBC's Ryan Nobles, who's on Capitol Hill for us. We've talked about this repeatedly, Ryan, both on the air, obviously, and on the podcast as well, which is who's winning the war here, who's winning the fight when it comes to this government shutdown. Are the Democrats winning? Are they gaining more steam, more momentum as the days tick on?
Yeah, it's hard to declare any winners in a shutdown because ultimately I think it is a political loser. But I do think that what Democrats feel right now is that their message is breaking through, that everyday Americans are starting to kind of align with them when it comes to this idea that health care is an issue that needs to be dealt with immediately and not something that can wait until the government reopens and then they begin this process of trying to pass these long-term appropriations bills. And it's even breaking through for people who are directly impacted by the way this whole thing is playing out. And Speaker Mike Johnson today took just random viewer calls on C-SPAN and had to answer a pretty tough and very direct questioning from someone who's directly impacted by the impacts of this shutdown and the possibility of what it means for health care. Take a listen to this back and forth.
If we see a lapse in pay come the 15th, my children do not get to get the medication that's needed for them to live their life, because we live paycheck to paycheck. I am begging you to pass this legislation. My kids could die.
Samantha, I'm so sorry to hear about your situation. This is what keeps me up at night. I want you to hear something very clearly. The Republicans are the ones delivering for you.
And so Johnson, there was a twofold question there. There was partly, A, what are you going to do about military members specifically getting their paychecks, because their paychecks are set to run out on the 15th of this month. But then more broadly, what are you going to do about health care? And you see, again, Yasmin, even when presented with these kind of direct questions about the very specific impacts, he immediately retreats back to, well, the Democrats aren't doing this, not necessarily what the Republicans are doing. And that's part of the reason that we find ourselves in this situation, because the other side keeps thinking it's the side they're up against that's to blame, not themselves.
So Ryan, yesterday, obviously, the conversation was around Marjorie Taylor Greene and that great interview that you did with her the previous evening, in which she's breaking with Democrats, I should say Republicans, and saying, listen, healthcare premiums are going to be going up. I might be on board with this thing. My daughter's healthcare costs are going to go up. So I'm going to break with my party on this. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't continue to support the president of the United States, President Donald Trump, because she is through and through, as we well know, MAGA. Anyone joining her on this at this point?
No, she's pretty much a lone voice in the Republican Party. And in fact, we have reporting with my colleague Mel Zanona today that there was a GOP conference call in which some of her colleagues were complaining about the fact that she's so vocal in her opposition to the Republican position right now. The Republicans are doing everything they can to try and stay unified behind this idea that none of these conversations can happen until this short-term spending plan is passed and the government is reopened. Taylor Greene has a much different view of that. She thinks that these conversations should be happening now. She is among the camp that says, let's just pass the appropriations bills. If we pass the appropriations bills, the government will get back open. So, her message is not resonating within her conference. The question is it resonating with the American people? And that's where I think when these Republicans hear that from their constituents, not necessarily from their colleagues, that's perhaps maybe when we'll see some sort of a breakthrough.
How much closer are we getting to getting this government back open? The question I basically ask you every single day. I mean, it's got to be sooner, considering the fact that people are going to start missing their paychecks. They probably already have today, likely early next week. That's going to start to become a problem.
We're not any closer than we were before it started, to be frank, Yasmin. There is no real sign of any kind of specific movement that would bring the shutdown to a quick end. But to your point, I do think we're coming up on some deadlines, some pressure points that may force these members of Congress to get to the negotiating table. That first is the first military paycheck that doesn't go through. I think that's going to have a very, very big impact on these senators and members of Congress. And then the end of the month, when we start to see benefits run out for women and infant children and the SNAP benefits and things along those lines, that's going to start to have widespread impacts across the country. And it may compel them to at least give a little bit on their entrenched positions.
Ryan Nobles for us. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. All right. The highest criminal court in Texas now putting the execution of a death row inmate on hold, a major development in a case that is being covered by our Dateline team. Robert Robertson was put on death row after being convicted for the murder of his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, who died back in 2002. Prosecutors said Nikki was a victim of shaken baby syndrome. This morning, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, citing in their decision another shaken baby case where they vacated the conviction of a man in Dallas County. The judge writing, quote, a death sentence is clearly final, and once carried out, hindsight is useless. Robertson's legal team says Nikki's shaken baby syndrome was wrong because medical experts say the symptoms of shaken baby syndrome don't just happen because of physical abuse. Robertson's attorney telling our Lister Holt that the national spotlight on this story has helped reveal a ton of new elements in the case. Part of that, she says, thanks to reporting from an NBC Dateline podcast that's been covering this story. The Texas Attorney General had previously pushed Robertson's October 16th execution date. His office did not immediately respond to NBC's request. Comment. Lester Holt, the host of the Last Appeal podcast, is joining us now.
Great to be with you.
Great to have you. And what a 24 hours we've been through with this case with Robert Robertson and what you guys have been covering on the last appeal. Walk us through exactly the case that they are citing in court to stay this execution.
Well, in today's episode of our podcast, we deal in part with this. A guy named Andrew Rourke, a Texan who was arrested after the little girl he was watching, his girlfriend's daughter, fell. He was arrested, charged with child abuse, sentenced to decades in prison. His case got another look, though, based on Texas's junk science law, which says if you think you were convicted based on bad science, you can get another day in court. But anyway, what the court here is saying is, let's go back and take another look and see if these cases match up. It's uncanny. The experts that were used for the prosecution are the same. Many of these things parallel, and it looks like the court is just saying, let's take a pause here and take a look at that. At the same time, though, interestingly, they seem to be dismissing or not dealing with questions of innocence, because the defense has come up with a lot of issues they've tried to appeal on.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I actually want to read a quote from Robertson's attorney saying that they are confident that an objective review of the science and medical evidence will show there was, in fact, no crime. So what happens next year? Because I know the ultimate objective for Robertson's attorneys is, let's get a new trial.
I think his attorney told me today she wants to get in front of a court as soon as possible and get this moving on. But you're going to see a lot more science in this, challenging the shaken baby diagnosis, which has been used to convict a number of people in a number of jurisdictions over the years. But this is going to really put it in the spotlight, trying to make the point that that medical advances now, scientific advances, show that these three particular points of injury that have been used to diagnose this are not always indicative of what really happened. And they're continuing to make the case that this little girl was sick, was very sick. Had 104.5-degree fever a few days before ultimately ending up in the hospital and dying. So there's a lot they're going to unearth. They've done a lot of this research already, but they are anxious to get this moving.
You talked about the new episode that is out today. You know, over the last 24 hours, I mentioned, right, we spoke yesterday. If folks were watching yesterday, they're watching today, they're saying, wow, this happened fast. It's taken a while, though.
Everything takes a while, but in our world, in the TV world, things have moved rather quickly. We know that our podcast had some impact on the course of this case. Yesterday we saw the defense file a motion based on something we had revealed. And as I said in this latest episode of our program, we deal with this issue of the Rourke case and him being charged very similar allegations and being exonerated.
Lester Holt, it's called The Last Appeal, wherever you get your podcasts out now. It's really incredible. Thank you, Lester.
Great. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it. All right, so right now, government ministers in Israel are voting to formally approve phase 1 of the plan to end the conflict in Gaza. It includes a ceasefire that will take effect within 24 hours and the release of both Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. President Trump today taking a victory lap.
People want to see this work. It's going to work. It's absolutely going to work. And it starts. It's already started. We've signed, as you know. Everybody's agreed. I think Monday is going to be a very big day, Monday, Tuesday. But it's going to be, depending on where you are, it's going to be a very big day.
So you're hearing it there. The potential hostage release met with relief, with joy on the streets of Tel Aviv at what's become known as Hostage Square. Some people popping champagne in celebration. And then in Gaza City. Celebrations and dancing in the streets there in Gaza, the site of so much destruction after 733 days of war, over 60,000 people killed there. But the deal is also being met with skepticism from some hostage families.
Do not agree to give them anything until they return all the hostages, the fallen just as the livings. We are certain that you, Israel, and additional countries around the world have extensive intelligence on the hostages' whereabouts. If the world falls into Hamas' trap of lies and effectively lets Hamas run the search for and return of the hostages, it will not happen.
Richard Engel is joining us now from Israel. Richard, I want to take a step back for a moment, because while this is a momentous time and the potential end of this war, the president taking a victory lap, as I mentioned, we are far from victory. We are far from the end. This is the very beginning of what may be a long road ahead.
Well, President Trump, Yasmin, talked about an eternal peace. We're not really at the ceasefire stage yet, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic. This deal does look like it's going ahead. It hasn't formally been approved by the Israeli Security Cabinet. It looks like that's going to happen. Nobody's really doubting it. But several steps need to happen after this. Israeli troops need to pull back. Hamas needs to actually hand over the hostages, living and dead. Israel needs to, as all part of the deal, hand over hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Israeli media tonight say there are still differences of opinion or disagreements over exactly who should be on those lists, which Palestinian prisoners should be released from Israeli jails. Then there are these open questions about who is going to govern the Gaza Strip after Hamas gives up power. Many things that are unanswered here, many things that could go wrong. And the people of Gaza, what kind of future will they have? Will they go back to living like they did in the past? Will they be able to rebuild? There were celebrations in Gaza, but many of these celebrations were more like celebrations of relief, celebrations that the war has ended, not necessarily celebrations because they are optimistic about the future.
Richard, I actually spoke to someone on the ground for our podcast in Gaza, and she said to me that one of the things that they want, obviously, is the end to this war. They want peace. They want the humanitarian aid. They want the food. We know there has been extreme starvation in Gaza. Once we get through, if and when we get through the hostage exchange, at what point will they begin to see the humanitarian aid coming in? The tents to provide a roof over the head for many Gazans who don't even have that right now.
That is still an open question, the exact sequence of events, because all of the entry points from Gaza are controlled currently by Israeli security forces. If they pull back the Rafah crossing into Egypt, there's talk about reopening that. But you've probably seen what Rafah looks like today. I went in one time with the Israeli military. They don't allow much access into Gaza for journalists. It has been closed to journalists. Independent access has been closed throughout this conflict. But I went there one time on a trip with the Israeli military. We went to Rafah, and it is completely leveled. So if Israeli troops pull back, then aid would need to flow through that area. But it is destroyed. The roads are destroyed. The infrastructure is destroyed. So you're going to need to rebuild the passageways to even bring aid in. There's been so much destruction in Gaza. There's been so much closure that you need to clear it away, find the bodies, find remains before you can even talk about rebuilding. There has been no discussion about the kind of government, or no public discussion, no list that has been presented to Palestinians of the names of the Palestinian leaders who are going to take over from Hamas. Hamas says it's going to give up power. But who comes in? What's the security forces? Who's going to police Gaza? None of these questions have been answered, Yasmin.
Richard Engel, thank you. And you can catch more of Richard on my podcast as well. And our podcast, NBC News, is Here's the Scoop, out wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. When we come back, Letitia James just putting out a video statement on X. We're going to bring it to you right after a break. Also, one woman admitting to trying to poison her partner with antifreeze, why she says she did it. Plus, the messy situation across one Illinois highway, what took crews hours to clean up. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A Connecticut woman is out of jail on bond tonight, but facing attempted murder charges after admitting to poisoning her estranged partner. This is Kristen Hogan. You see her here. She had a child with her partner, but things took an ugly turn back in August. Her partner, who police aren't naming, told authorities he hosted a family dinner and put some leftover wine in the fridge. He had a glass a few days later and ended up in the hospital really sick. He survived, and Hogan quickly confessed, telling detectives she put some of the active ingredient from antifreeze into the wine bottle, saying that she, quote, never intended to kill him, but just wanted to make him sick as payback for him being mentally abusive. Hogan's lawyers telling NBC News she'll plead not guilty. Stephanie Gosk is all over this one. What do we know here?
It's a weird one. You know, all the details we know about this case, Yasmin, are from her cell phone and the search warrant that and the arrest warrant from the police. They lay out the case, and there are some really interesting things that they discovered on her cell phone, according to this arrest warrant. Among them, that in the days before the poisoning, that she had actually searched for poisonous chemicals on her phone, including monoethylene glycol, which is the active ingredient in antifreeze. And you might think antifreeze smells funny, it looks funny. Yeah. That's because they'd added stuff to it. Because monoethylene glycol is odorless, it's colorless, it has a slightly sweet taste to it, but it is poisonous. And
so
it can
it's
start
the pure form.
Yep, it can start with nausea, then it goes to potentially convulsions and kidney failure. And her estranged partner was in the hospital on dialysis following the drinking of this wine. The phone also revealed that the phone itself had been in, or at least the immediate vicinity of the estranged partner's home as well. And according to this arrest warrant, she had told police that she was in Rhode Island with her family. Now, this is just one side of the story. We have not heard what her case is, but her lawyer did speak after the hearing today, and this is what he had to say.
This case is not what it seems. There's a lot more to this story. We can't really get into more details on that. What we do know is Kristen is a loving mother. She cares about her kids more than anything, and she's looking forward to keeping this case moving and resolving it.
She has not entered a plea yet in this case. She is out on bail, and she's going to be staying with her parents as this trial unfolds.
Lots of twists and turns there.
Yeah, certainly are.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right, Attorney General Letitia James putting out a video statement after she was just indicted by a federal grand jury on one count of a bank fraud charge and one count of making a false statement to a financial institution.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost.
We should note the White House press office is declining to comment. U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan saying in a statement just in part this: no one is above the law. The charges as alleged in this case represent intentional criminal acts and tremendous breaches of the public's trust. The facts and the law in this case are clear, and we will continue following them to ensure that justice is served. We're going to have much more breaking news coverage on this indictment right here on NBC News Now. For now, though, we want to get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, right-wing conspiracy theorist Alex Jones is asking the Supreme Court to pause a $1.4 billion defamation judgment he owes for making false claims that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was a hoax. In the filing, Jones claims the court's involvement is needed to prevent his website, InfoWars, from being sold to the satirical news site The Onion. We've been telling you about this. That sale meant to help fund payments to family members of Sandy Hook victims. Number 2, a Florida judge ruling that the suspect accused of, quote, maliciously starting the January Palisades fire will stay behind bars pending trial. Remember, the fire was one of the worst in Southern California history, killing 12 people, destroying thousands of homes and businesses. Number 3, new body cam video showing Miami Beach police rescuing 4 people after their boat capsized. You can see officers throwing life jackets, pulling them to safety. Fortunately, everybody is okay. Number 4, a federal judge is dismissing Drake's defamation case against his own record label, Universal Music Group. The suit claimed UMG spread false information about the rapper being a pedophile through Kendrick Lamar's hit song, Not Like Us, and artificially boosted streaming numbers for the diss track. But the judge ruled the lyrics were a, quote, non-actionable opinion, and Drake did not meet the standard for proving malice in a defamation case. Remember, this was all stemming from a rap battle between the two artists. UMG saying the suit was, in their words, an affront to all artists and, quote, never should see the light of day. We reached out to Drake and Kendrick for comment, but have yet to hear back. Number 5, Angel Reese will become the first pro athlete to walk in the Victoria's Secret fashion show. The WNBA star posting on Instagram that she's, in her words, stepping into a dream. It's the latest off-court move from Reese and already has a deal with Reebok and a podcast. All right, tonight, red flags being raised in the Southwest as measles cases in some states there are on the rise. Health officials saying this is one of the largest measles outbreaks that we have seen recently around the Utah-Arizona border. And in just the last 24 hours or so, South Carolina's health department now saying 2 schools are linked to the measles outbreak in that state. The CDC's latest count shows more than 1,564 measles cases across the country this year. And see all of the purple there? That is the spread in up to 41 states now. Want to bring in Dr. Kavita Patel, who's standing by for us to talk about this. Dr. Patel, how concerned should we be, should folks be about this kind of persistent uptick we've been seeing in measles cases across the country?
I think it's extremely concerning, Yasmin, because we're seeing these cases not by accident. We know that from some NBC News work done in conjunction with Stanford University, that were pockets of the country. For example, you just talked about Utah. 79% of kindergartners in Washington County, Utah, are vaccinated against the measles. And we've talked about what the numbers that you need to be immune as a community. It's anywhere between 92 and 95% to get that herd immunity to protect against an outbreak. So this is deeply troubling. And as a reminder, measles symptoms can be incredibly widespread. Some of them have a classic fever, a rash that you can see, sore throat, kind of a red tongue. But in general, this can look sometimes like the early stage of any other virus, Yasmin. So it can often go unchecked until it's almost too late.
Let me ask you this. If one is vaccinated against measles, can they still get it if the virus begins to mutate?
Yes. So it doesn't even have to depend on the mutation of the virus. To be candid with you, it has more to do with the fact that there's just more opportunities for the virus to infect you, even if you're vaccinated. Now, let me be clear. The worst outcomes without a vaccine on board are death, loss of hearing, diseases of the brain that we can see, meningitis, et cetera. So that's very deafness. But if you're vaccinated, you can get infected because there's not that shell of immunity around you. Just think of it as a virus that can have many chances to get you infected.
School children are of most concern. How should school officials, how should public health officials be working with public schools?
Yeah, I just want to point out, you mentioned South Carolina. The Department of Public Health actually put out a warning that anyone who's not vaccinated will actually be asked to stay home and have virtual learning. So this is a critical, if you have an unvaccinated child in cases that you know of or are suspicious of, keep the child at home to keep yourself and the household safe.
Dr. Kavita Patel, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, some rare comments tonight from Victoria Beckham about her life in the spotlight, how she says she lost, quote, all sense of reality. Victoria Beckham is opening up about how she lost all sense of reality as she became a global phenomenon while also struggling with an eating disorder.
I had no control over what was being written about me, pictures that were being taken. And I suppose I wanted to control that, you know? I could control it with the clothing, I could control my weight. And I was controlling it in an incredibly unhealthy way.
So that is in this new documentary today on Netflix, taking an intimate look at the many layers of her life and her career. Victoria Beckham, also known as Posh Spice, was thrust into the spotlight in the mid-90s when she became a member of the hugely popular Spice Girls. She says during that time, she became very good at lying. Eating disorders, they are a growing concern across the world. In 2021, 16 million people experienced an eating disorder. Chloe Malas is following this story for us. There was this moment when she was a part of the Spice Girls and was this hugely popular star, new to the scene, and incredibly young, by the way, where she had just had a baby. And she talks about this, and she was weighed live on television, like months after having had a child, right? And you can only imagine the pressure that she was under during that time. We face that on a very, very teeny tiny scale.
Sure.
Right? Imagine what Victoria faces every day, Victoria Beckham, and faced back then as a Spice Girl.
I mean, she has been so incredibly private for years. So to have her open up now, just a couple years after David Beckham, her husband's documentary on Netflix that was hugely successful, we're learning so much. And there are a lot of celebrities that have come out and talked about having had eating disorders. You have Kesha, you have Hilary Duff, you've had Taylor Swift talk about issues that she's had. And so, you know, now we're hearing about Victoria, who, like you said, was this one of the first pop stars, right? I mean, she paved the way for people like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and these girl bands. And for her to say, look, when I was at the height of my fame, I was dealing with so much. And this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what she reveals in this 3-part docuseries.
It is so huge, I have to say, having had an eating disorder myself in my teens. I think having someone like that come out publicly, someone that so many people admired and continue to admire, and say, truthfully, this is what I was dealing with and the pressures, it just kind of takes away the pressure, the taboo of talking about mental health disorders in that way, right, publicly.
Well, what I think is just so relatable and wonderful, and thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that about you either.
Doesn't have to be a confessional.
Right, but, you know, this is real, right?
Yeah,
this is what this is all about.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, breaking down that third wall and being really honest. It's just, we don't hear from her. She doesn't do interviews,
No,
right?
she doesn't. She's
She
always
doesn't
been very
talk about
private.
her personal life. She doesn't talk about her family. She didn't really share much at all in David Beckham's documentary, right?
Yeah.
All we saw was the dancing to Islands in the Stream, right? Which was so lovely to see behind their relationship.
Yeah.
This is huge, and she can help so many people by talking about what she went through. She also talks about how she was not popular growing up, like you might think, because she was Posh Spice.
Yeah.
She said that she was a loner and she lived on the fringe. She also talked about how hard it was to be accepted by the fashion community.
Her fashion line.
Launching her line, and how she always felt like an outsider, how shy she is around the paparazzi. And speaking of just what she said about her eating disorder, talking about her daughter Harper, telling her to be who you are, unapologetically you, and how she instills that every single day. And as a mother of 2 sons, that's what I hope to do as well, to tell them, be yourself. And also tell me when you're having a problem. And it sounds like Victoria Beckham, she hid a lot of stuff for so many years. And now you can just tell that she's really happy to be cathartic.
She seems more settled.
And to reveal this. It's a different side of Victoria that we've never seen.
Lima Loss, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, if you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, there are resources listed here that can certainly help. All right, NBC covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local. From our Southern Bureau, Publix says it'll now allow customers to openly carry guns at its Florida grocery stores after a judge overturned the state's ban last month. Publix says it follows all federal, state, and local laws, and that it will call police if any customer creates a threatening experience, gun or not. From our Midwest Bureau, an overturned truck spilling over 40,000 pounds of applesauce on a highway in Illinois. It took crews almost 4 hours to clean up the mess. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. Also from our Midwest Bureau, 'tis the season of runaway spooky inflatables. Ohio police say they got a ton of calls reporting a pumpkin on a loose in their neighborhood. You can see it here. Police tried and failed to deflate it before eventually just wrangling it into the backseat. I believe it was, in fact, though, returned to its rightful owners. All right, still to come. Could some athletes soon bet on pro sports? The new moves from the NCAA. We'll be right back. The NCAA today moving closer to letting college athletes and athletic department staff bet on professional sports. The rule would go into effect on November 1st if the committees for Division II and III also vote to approve. The committee chair says the members are concerned about the risks associated with sports gambling, but that lifting the restrictions evens the playing field, so to speak, because non-athlete students are already allowed to bet on professional sports. Sam Brock is joining us now with more on this. Walk us through how this came to be. what could actually come from it. It feels like the reins are being taken off here.
It's an important distinction to make here, Yasmin, which is that college students are not being allowed to gamble on college games. They're being allowed to gamble on professional sports, which, by the way, to your point, is exactly what all of their other students and colleagues are able to do right now. There are still guardrails, but as it pertains to athletes betting on sporting events that they're actually participating in, as you'll see here, you cannot bet on college sports if you're a student athlete, or anyone in college for that matter. You cannot share information college competitors with bettors. You cannot have advertising and sponsorships of NCAA championships by betting sites in the college space, right? So all of that makes sense. But I would also add there are 39 states right now in the United States, plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., that allow for legalized sports gambling. So not even every single state allows it. But of those that do, there's generally a mandatory minimum of 21 years old. That's the threshold where you'd be able to bet. So for many of these college students, they can't even bet to begin with if they're under the age of 21.
You've also got new opportunities with this happening as well, right? Name, likeness deals. I mean, a whole kind of open market for these college athletes.
There was an absolute sea change a few years ago. This was a Supreme Court decision in 2021, Alston, in which the Supreme Court found that the NCAA was violating antitrust law by not allowing student athletes to benefit, to maximize their educational benefits, which paved the way for NIL, which is short for name, image, and likeness, essentially being able to make as much money as they possibly can off of their own branding. Okay, then you have the transfer portal, which allows them to move from one year to the next without sitting out a single year, to be able to go to another place where they can maximize earnings. It sort of made the economics of college sports something that it had never been until that point. We spoke with Michael McCann, who is a professor at the University of New Hampshire, their Sports Institute Law School there, specifically about this idea that NIL was also a good example where if other college people can do things, other students can make money if they're, in different spaces in life, musicians, why would athletes not be able to do the same thing? Take a quick listen.
A college musician or a college actor can make money for the use of their name, image, and likeness and other identifying traits. So, why can't a classmate who plays the sport do so? So it goes back to that idea of treating college athletes like their classmates.
So this is all about fairness and equity. I will say that the Administrative Committee for Division I has signed off on college student athletes being able to gamble on professional sports. D2 and D3 would have to follow. Their votes are expected later this month. If that does happen, then officially they can gamble on professional sports on November 1st.
Sam Brock, fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. All right, that is a wrap for this hour. A reminder, do not miss our new podcast, Here's the Scoop, wherever you get your podcasts, out now. Coverage picks up here right now. We got breaking news here at the top of the hour. With New York's Attorney General, one of President Trump's biggest adversaries, now facing a federal indictment. What we're just hearing from Letitia James in a new video statement she just put out. Plus, right now, the world holding its breath as the Israeli cabinet votes on whether to greenlight phase 1 of that peace deal. What the next hours and days could look like as President Trump says hostages could be released as soon as Monday. Plus, why are streets flooding in coastal cities with sunny skies? How rising sea levels are putting us at greater and greater risk of so-called king tides. And a major development in a story that we've been following, a man convicted of killing his 2-year-old daughter getting his execution put on pause for now. Why a Texas judge says new science raised lots of questions about shaken baby syndrome. Lester Holt joins us for a live report. And a Connecticut judge is letting a woman out on bond after she admitted to poisoning her ex with antifreeze-laced wine. Why the woman plans to plead not guilty despite that confession later on in the show. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie tonight, and we start with that breaking news just into us. New York Attorney General Letitia James saying she will fight after a federal grand jury indicted her on bank fraud and a false statement to a financial institution charge.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost.
So the Justice Department saying she could face up to 3 decades in prison per count if she's convicted, and comes after the president publicly called for his Justice Department appointees to bring charges against her. The White House press office is not commenting on the indictment against James. U.S. Attorney General Lindsay saying in a statement just into us, quote, "No one is above the law," I should say Lindsay Halligan. "The charges as alleged in this case represent intentional criminal acts and tremendous breaches of the public's trust." That is U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan. Remember, over 24 hours ago, former FBI Director James Comey pled not guilty to charges of making a false statement and obstruction. We have got team coverage on this. Legal analyst Misty Maris is standing by for us, though. We want to start with Kelly O'Donnell in Washington. We are just getting the actual court documents into us. What more are we learning about this indictment, Kelly?
Well, having the actual documents makes a world of difference from where we started when we were talking about this earlier. And what it gives us is the specifics of what the government alleges here. They say that Letitia James purchased a home in 2020 in Norfolk, Virginia, and she got a mortgage on that loan. And by describing it as a primary residence in what we understand to be one document among the many that is submitted when you do a mortgage, that getting a primary loan rate for residence, primary residence loan rate, is a cheaper rate and therefore an advantage. The indictment says that she lied about that and intentionally did so. Now, she is promising a very fierce defense on this, and her attorney has specifically talked about the fact that they will push back on this. But the circumstances were 2020, a home in Norfolk, Virginia that her niece lives in, and an investment property typically has a higher rate for a mortgage. So that's where the financial crime comes in here, and that's what this is about. And so if you provide false information on a document when you are applying for a federally protected mortgage, that's where you can be held responsible here. One of the key issues is intent. The government is saying this was criminal intent. And certainly there are those who, according to her lawyer, there were reports of other prosecutors who reviewed these facts, and because this is one document among many where this was listed in only one instance as a primary residence, not the way she applied in other things. It could have been clerical, it could have been other things. We will see what defense she puts forward. But that's why it's in Virginia. That's why it deals with a mortgage alleged violation and providing false information to a financial institution. That's how we get 2 counts. And certainly the political context is enormously important. We've already seen how the governor of New York has called this weaponization. The attorney general herself in New York has put out that video statement that you played a portion of. And her lawyer, Abby Lowell, a very prominent Washington, D.C. lawyer, has also put out a statement. And he says to us, that Attorney General James flatly and forcefully denies these charges. We're deeply concerned that this case is driven by President Trump's desire for revenge, he writes. When a president can publicly direct charges to be filed against someone, when it's reported that career attorneys concluded none were warranted, that's his reference to others in the office, it marks a serious attack on the rule of law. Lowell goes on to say, we will fight these charges in every process allowed in the law. So the next steps would be an arraignment, the kind of appearance we saw for James Comey, the former FBI director, yesterday. It's in the same venue. And Letitia James, of course, is an elected leader in the state of New York. She talked about the fact she brought a civil case against President Trump and the Trump administration. They were found liable of fraud in that very expensive monetary penalties that they are appealing. So the president, members of his family, some of his MAGA allies, political allies, supporters and so forth have long talked about Letitia James. And so about a couple of weeks now from that post that was the president's words to Pam Bondi, the attorney general, talking about wanting to have action taken. And here we are now in early October with an indictment, a 2-count federal indictment against Letitia James.
I think it's notable here, Kelly, this indictment against James has some similarity to the federal governor the president is accusing of mortgage fraud as well.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
In the Fed chair, in the Fed chair board, the governor that is being accused of mortgage fraud as well.
Yes.
Lisa Cook.
So Bill Pulte is the Federal Finance Housing Agency official who is a Trump appointee, and they hold the records for mortgages, when you apply for mortgages that have any kind of federal protection to them. And they went through their records. Bill Pulte has said that he believes that is part of what they need to do. And they made criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. In the case of Lisa Cook, a Fed board member. In the case of Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. So these essentially paperwork violations, as the government sees it, were presented to the Department of Justice to review. Evidence was presented to a grand jury in what is a secret process, and that has resulted in these documents. Misty can explain that a grand jury is looking for probable cause, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's one step in the legal process, but it is a weighty step to have a 2-count indictment against the highest law enforcement official in one of our larger states, the state of New York. So it is consequential. It is important. The subject matter is certainly in the weeds, but anyone who's applied for a mortgage has a sense of what that paperwork is like and what that process is. And being truthful is required when you sign your name, and that's what they are challenging with Letitia James.
Kelly O'Donnell, thank you. Appreciate it. Want to bring in now NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris to talk more about this. Let's talk first about the strength of these charges here and what you see stands out in this indictment.
So what stands out in this indictment to me, we're going back to 2020. It's obviously going to be largely based on paperwork. And it's the idea that there were misrepresentations in this paperwork in order to receive more favorable loan terms. And specifically, as Kelly laid out, we're talking about an investment property versus a second home. What stood out to me in the indictment, if true, is that there is a section that relates to tax deductions that were made according to the indictment, as an investment property. So identifying the home as an investment property where the mortgage documents say it's a second home. So right there's something that will need to be ironed out in court. But at the end of the day, this case will come down to intent. Both of these statutes require knowing, purposeful, intentional misrepresentations for the purpose of financial gain and for the purpose of misrepresenting to that financial institution to obtain those better rates. So that's the challenge here always when you have an intent crime.
What does it say to you about the strength of the case when, with both James Comey and now Letitia James, the person who held the office of U.S. Attorney at the Eastern District of Virginia believed that there was not enough evidence to bring this indictment forward, and yet now Lindsay Halligan, a Trump appointee, has in fact brought it forward, who has no prosecutorial experience?
I think we're going to see very similar motions that were represented in Jim Comey's arraignment recently. His attorney saying, we're making motions to dismiss this indictment. It's unlikely this case ever goes to trial very confidently. And the reason for that, you'll see a motion on selective and vindictive prosecution, meaning she's being targeted by the administration because she's spoken out and in fact gone against Trump in that civil fraud case. Obviously, there's a lot on the public sphere relating to that. So that's one piece of it. She's being treated differently than others. The other piece relates directly to Halligan. So all of that being said, you have Halligan who's bringing these charges. Others apparently had declined to do so. That's going to speak to that selective vindictive prosecution element. But there's also a challenge being brought by Comey's attorney that Halligan was not validly appointed. So if she's making the charging decisions here, she's presenting to the grand jury. If her appointment as a U.S. attorney was not valid, then the indictment is not valid, is the argument. So we're going to see those threshold motions very, very similar to what will play out in Comey, likely to play out here as well.
And obviously, this is a constantly developing story. So we're just getting in now that Letitia James has, in fact, been summoned to appear for her first court appearance on October 24th, 2025 in Virginia at 9 a.m. Misty Maris, thank you as well. All right, NBC News has learned that the U.S. military is preparing options to deploy as many as 200 U.S. troops to Israel to support the international stabilization force that is being set up to be the long-term internal security solution for Gaza. That is according to 2 U.S. officials familiar with the planning, who say the troops will also support the flow of humanitarian aid and security assistance into Gaza. The news is coming as government ministers in Israel are voting to formally approve phase 1 of the plan to end the conflict in Gaza. It includes a ceasefire that will take effect within 24 hours and the release of both Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. And we are just getting this video. You see Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a cabinet meeting with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Both men reported to have helped broker the peace deal. President Trump today taking a victory lap.
People want to see this work. It's going to work. It's absolutely going to work. And it starts, it's already started. We've signed, as you know. Everybody's agreed. I think Monday is going to be a very big day, Monday, Tuesday. But it's going to be, depending on where you are, it's going to be a very big day.
Monica Alba is joining us now from the White House. Listen, the president's got a lot riding on this. The world has a lot riding on this. Gazans, Palestinians, Israelis, families of hostages. Everybody's got a lot riding on this. How much has he been involved in this ongoing negotiation? Not just, obviously, the conversation that he had with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he was at the White House and announced the possible end, and the possible deal, but the last few days.
Oh, Yasmin, the president has been extremely involved, and according to senior U.S. officials, we've just learned a lot more about exactly how this played out. And we know that there was momentum that was really critical that started to accumulate around the UN General Assembly and that major meeting that President Trump had with his top aides and with the leaders of Muslim-majority countries. And those Arab leaders essentially signed off and gave a lot of feedback on the president's 20-point peace plan. And the fact that that happened was key, we've learned, and certainly that was then carried over into that critical meeting that was followed then with Prime Minister Netanyahu also backing the plan after a couple of changes. And then that critical apology from the Israeli Prime Minister to the leader of Qatar for that Israeli strike into Doha. We know that those were two really essential moments here that allowed U.S. officials to hope and believe that the plan could get to the place where yesterday they were able to make this announcement about an agreement on phase one. But senior U.S. officials are also being candid about the complication of what comes next. And even one of them just now on a phone call said there are still some things that could go wrong here, obviously. And so that is how we're learning a lot of these new details, Yasmin, like the one you just referred to about these 200 U.S. troops that will likely be sent to Israel. They will stay in Israel. We're told no boots on the ground in Gaza, but that will help be the sort of insurance mechanism that the parties are agreeing to and holding up their end of the deal here. Yasmin.
The president, Monica, has mentioned Alba has mentioned Iran a few times. He's mentioned your name as well, but he's mentioned Iran a couple of times over the last few days, even saying today that Iran supports the deal and will, in fact, negotiate as well. What have you heard on this front, if Iran at all was in contact with Hamas throughout these negotiations, and if the president has been, in fact, and or had any communications with Iranian leadership?
Well, if you go, of course, back to earlier this summer and the U.S. dropping those bombs on Iranian nuclear sites, U.S. officials point to that as a key pivot point in the entire story of the ability for the U.S. to try to pursue this peace deal as well, Yasmin, and that is because it was a moment where the U.S. was able to demonstrate its loyalty and its backing of Israel and was pretty firm and steadfast in that. But then again, over these conversations and these different points over the last couple of months, the president has also been a key ally of some of these Arab countries as well. And so this is a situation where the White House says the president has been able to be an honest broker with both, and that will continue. But it's the stability of this entire region that is always, as you know, incredibly delicate. And U.S. officials are saying that certainly remains the posture. This is still fragile. This is still tense, but with a lot of hope and optimism for at least the release of the hostages.
Monica Alba, thank you. Appreciate it. Some breaking news just into us. A judge just ruled that she's siding in part with the state of Illinois over the National Guard troops' presence there. We'll explain what that means in just a second. Tensions obviously already high in the state. You're seeing protests that erupted in Chicago earlier today. It's coming as another set of judges seem to be okay with allowing service members to put boots on the ground in Portland as early as next week. And as Memphis gets ready to see the National Guard there tomorrow, want to bring in Shaq Brewster, who's on the ground for us in Broadview, Illinois. Walk us through what's going on inside this courtroom and the judge's latest ruling here, Shaq.
Well, Yasmin, you mentioned that the judge has said that she is siding with the state in part in this lawsuit, but no final ruling has been delivered just yet. She's going through the facts and the reasoning of her decision right now, and both sides are kind of going through the technical language. If we can just step back a little bit, we know that the city of Chicago and state of Illinois has sued the federal government for federalizing, taking over the Illinois National Guard, and for deploying those 200 members of the Texas National Guard to the state of Illinois, including some who are stationed at the building that's behind me. The federal government has said that this is needed because of the protests that you've been seeing, of the attacks on law enforcement, that there's lawlessness in the Chicago area, and that the National Guard is needed to protect federal property and federal officers. The state and city has essentially said that's not true, that there's nothing that warrants and nothing that complies with the law that suggests that the National Guard should be sent to Chicago. So right now, the judge in the courtroom really casting doubt on that portrayal that we've been hearing from the federal government, that there's this violence taking place. At one point saying that there have been several rulings in the past 24 hours that has casted doubt on what the federal government has been saying, and saying that, this is a quote, "I find that deploying the National Guard would only add fuel to the fire that the defendants themselves," the defendants being the federal government, "have started," saying it's not in the community interest. So it definitely seems as if she's siding with the state, siding with the city in this lawsuit, but it remains to be seen what that means specifically for the National Guard troops that are here in the state of Illinois. Again, about 500 in total activated, and those troops, about 100 who are in that facility behind me. So
we've talked about Illinois, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, possibly Portland, going to Memphis tomorrow. They're going to start patrolling as well. What's next here?
That, is a big question. I think the administration, we heard it from Pam Bondi when she was at that cabinet meeting earlier today, they are very much signaling that they are going to only continue to go. They want to continue their stepped up immigration enforcement in many of these cities. They believe they are on firm legal footing with the militarization in some of these cities that we've been seeing. You have this pattern, though, that we saw it in L.A., we saw it in Oregon, we're starting to see it now in Chicago, where you have district judges, federal judges at the district level, the ones who hear the facts, who hear both sides of everything. They side with the local entities, but then the federal government, they appeal it to the appellate courts, and that's when many of these rulings have eventually been overturned or stayed. So there's this legal back and forth, and I think that's something that you're going to continue to see, but we're seeing the first step of that process here in Chicago now.
Shaq Brewster for us on the ground in Illinois. Thank you, Shaq. Appreciate it. So as the East Coast is bracing for these heavy rains and dangerous rip currents from this weekend's nor'easter, some coastal cities are already seeing their streets blanketed in floodwater as a result of powerful king tides. This isn't new. These unusually high tides typically strike around twice a year. But as sea levels rise, they're only getting stronger. Meteorologist Bill Cairns has more in tonight's breakdown.
You heard of the high tides, but what about king tides? That's what's hitting beaches along the southeast, the powerful tides flooding the Carolinas and Florida.
It will come up into these yards right up to those stairs there.
That's in South Florida this week, where the streets are swamped despite sunny skies. It's expected to continue through the weekend. On social media, users posting flooded docks and waves slamming a boardwalk. A familiar scene for Lynette Coleman, a Broward County resident who has seen the king tides many times before.
You cannot see the difference between the river and the street.
King tide isn't exactly a scientific term, but it's used to describe exceptionally high tides, according to NOAA. These tides come around once or twice a year when the sun and moon align to produce a higher than normal gravitational pull. They typically come during a new or full moon, or when the moon is at its perigee, the point in its orbit when it's closest to Earth. And when that happens with a full moon, we call it a supermoon, which occurred earlier this week, triggering the king tides.
As that moon is closer to Earth, its gravitational pull increases. So we see those tides, and in some cases now we're seeing flooding with some of those king tides.
They can shut down roads, overwhelm drainage systems, and erode coastlines and produce dangerous rip currents. Like in 2020, when high surfing king tides swept 2 children out to sea in Oregon. And while exceptionally high tides are predictable, when they coincide with intense weather like a hurricane or nor'easter, it's coastal flooding on steroids. One example, Superstorm Sandy, which devastated the Northeast in 2012, flooding New York City and wiping out coastal communities. That was during a full moon, or what's called a spring tide. It's hard to imagine, but Sandy with a king tide would have been even worse. Climate change also impacting all of this, with sea levels rising.
Since 1900, we've had anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of sea level rise. So those highest tides of the year early in the 1900s might not have done a whole lot. But with that 10 to 12 inches of sea level rise, that's enough to cause flooding.
In Charleston, for example, since 1970 to now, up 9 inches. The city also preparing for intense flooding this Friday and Saturday. And a growing concern up the East Coast as a nor'easter approaches, set to batter the coast this weekend with heavy rain, strong winds on top of the powerful king tides.
You know, we got a lot of weather going on, to say the least, in addition to those king tides, and now we got this nor'easter.
The nor'easter is going to, I mean, people are going to think there's a tropical storm. I mean, it's going to be that bad.
That's how bad it's going to be.
Yes, and I think people are going to lose power, maybe hundreds of thousands, and we're going to have structures that are going to be damaged on the coast from this flooding. So it's going to be a serious storm. So let's time this out for you. So the first thing tomorrow with those king tides, Charleston's going to have a very high tide. Water will be in the city if you watch live pictures at 11 a.m. tomorrow when it's at its crest. So then the storm. This is going to be as we go throughout Sunday. So Saturday, the worst of it is in the Outer Banks. As we go through Sunday, high tide is about noon to like 4 p.m., roughly from the Delaware, Maryland coast all the way through southern New Jersey. This is going to be significant flooding. In some cases, top 10. This is bordering on historic in some areas. So this is going to catch a lot of people by surprise. And over the next 2 days, a lot of people are going to be yanking their boats out of the water here in coastal areas of Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. Then the storm sits here and does a loop-de-loop and stalls, but it will be weakening as we go through Monday. So what does this all mean? Max wind gusts first off. This will be mostly on Saturday in the 37, 35, 39, 49 in Virginia Beach. Look at these wind gusts up here, and I think these will go up too. I think this will go in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range. So, Yasmin, we are going to have significant flooding, possibly historic. I think we're going to see power outages on Long Island in New Jersey, probably in the hundreds of thousands. This will be a very serious storm for this localized area of the Mid-Atlantic and the greater New York City area. Stay tuned for more details. And it's over the holiday weekend too. So if people aren't paying attention, it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Bill Cairns, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to D.C. now, to Capitol Hill, where earlier today 7 was not a lucky number for Congress after the Senate for the 7th time voted down a pair of bills that could have ended the government shutdown. Republicans and Democrats stay in the course, with both sides of the aisle focused more on rhetoric than deal-making, with Republicans voicing major outrage today over a comment Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer apparently made to Punchbowl News on Wednesday night, telling the outlet that when it comes to the shutdown stretching on, quote, every day gets better for us. The comment really firing up Republicans. Vice President Vance calling the comment, quote, a vile sentiment. Schumer appearing to defend himself earlier today.
Every day that Republicans refuse to negotiate to end this shutdown, the worse it gets for Americans, and the clearer it becomes who's fighting for them. Each day, our case to fix health care and end the shutdown gets better and better, stronger and stronger, because families are opening their letters, showing how high their premiums will climb.
NBC's Ryan Nobles is on Capitol Hill for us. Tom Yamas actually sat down with House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier today, Ryan. I want to take a little bit of a listen to that, and then we'll talk on the other side.
Speaking of choices the president may make, he has said he's open to permanently laying off or firing some of these federal workers that have been furloughed. Who is the president talking about here? Can you explain that to our viewers?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about those details. I do know that he's getting a collection of legal analysis from attorneys who are trying to determine what the law fully provides and how much back pay is provided. But I can tell you where the president's heart is.
Wait, Speaker, but do you support the president firing furloughed workers?
I support, look, we're limited government conservatives, and there is too much inefficiency in the federal government. It's too large. It does too many things. There are programs that probably should be eliminated, but we want federal employees to be protected. I believe we have always followed the tradition. I think it's the law that the furloughed employees of the federal government because of a shutdown should be given back pay. I think that's what's going to happen here.
It's a bit confusing where he's at on this, especially as to whether or not he's actually in lockstep with the president. Do we know how much he's talking to the president, where he is with him?
Well, I think there's a good lesson up here in this version of Congress, Yasmin, and that is Mike Johnson is always in lockstep with the president. even if he may appear to not be in lockstep with the president. If the president tells him that he wants him to do something a certain way, there's no doubt that Mike Johnson's going to do it that way. That has been his entire career as Speaker of the House. It's probably the reason he's the Speaker of the House, and it's probably the reason he retains the position as Speaker of the House. So, I think he was trying to kind of dance around the particulars of Tom's question, even though Tom was able to kind of drill him down on the specifics of it. There's two different conversations here that Mike Johnson's having. The first is about whether or not all these furloughed workers are going to be fired and whether or not the president has the authority to do that. And then secondly, whether or not they're going to get back pay. He's all of a sudden now saying, yes, the law says they're guaranteed to back pay. Right. A couple of days ago, he was kind of dithering about that. And you and I talked about that on the podcast, why I didn't really think that was a real thing. So what we're seeing Mike Johnson do almost at every turn, and he did it in the interview with Tom as well, is he finds a way to make it about Chuck Schumer without specifically talking about his role in all of it. And he did that in a later part of the interview, if we want to take a listen to that.
What the heck is he talking about? I'm trying to muster every ounce of Christian charity that I can, but this is outrageous. He's playing games with the American people. Real people are being hurt.
Obviously, that wasn't part of the interview. This was him. Mike Johnson has talked so many times over the past 2 weeks, Yasmin, it's difficult for me to keep track of all of it, but that was during his press conference this morning. You can tell he is frustrated. He is upset. He believes that Chuck Schumer is responsible for this shutdown. He believes that passing the short-term spending bill would eliminate all of these problems, get everyone back to work, and then they could have this negotiation. The problem here is that there is just a lack of trust between Republicans and Democrats, and that's why we find ourselves in this position.
Ryan Nobles, thank you. Appreciate it. And you can catch more of Tom Yamas's interview with Speaker Johnson next hour right here on NBC News Now. Coming up, some dramatic new video showing the moment crews rescued 4 from a capsized boat in Florida. We're going to show it to you. Plus, some warning signs tonight over a new measles outbreak where officials say cases are rising again. We'll be right back. Breaking news just into NBC. The Israeli government has approved the Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal, according to the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The approval of the plan includes a ceasefire that will take effect within 24 hours and the release of both Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. It comes as NBC News has learned that the U.S. military is preparing options to deploy as many as 200 U.S. troops to Israel to support the international stabilization force that is being set up to be the long-term internal security solution for Gaza. That is according to 2 U.S. officials familiar with the planning, who say the troops will also support the flow of humanitarian aid and security assistance into Gaza. All right, the highest criminal court in Texas now putting the execution of a death row inmate on hold, a major development in the case being covered by our Dateline team. Robert Robertson was put on death row after being convicted for the murder of his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, who died in 2002. Prosecutors said Nikki was a victim of shaken baby syndrome. This morning, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals citing in their decision another shaken baby case where they vacated the conviction of a man in Dallas County. The judge writing a death sentence is clearly final, and once carried out, hindsight, the judge said, is useless. Robertson's legal team saying Nikki's shaken baby syndrome was wrong because medical experts say the symptom of shaken baby syndrome don't just happen because of physical abuse. Robertson's lawyer telling our Lester Holt that the national spotlight on this story has helped reveal a ton of new elements in the case. Part of that, she says, thanks to reporting from an NBC Dateline podcast that's been covering the story. The Texas Attorney General had previously pushed for Robertson's October 16th execution date. His office did not immediately respond to NBC's request for comment. Lester Holt, the host of the Last Appeal podcast, is joining us now.
Great to be with you.
Great to have you. And what 24 hours we've been through with this case with Robert Robertson and what you guys have been covering on the Last Appeal. Walk us through exactly the case that they are citing in court to stay this execution.
Well, in today's episode of our podcast, deal in part with this. A guy named Andrew Rourke, a Texan who was arrested after the little girl he was watching, his girlfriend's daughter, fell. He was arrested, charged with child abuse, sentenced to decades in prison. His case got another look, though, based on Texas's junk science law, which says if you think you were convicted based on bad science, you can get another day in court. But anyway, what the court here is saying is Let's go back and take another look and see if these cases match up. It's uncanny. The experts that were used for the prosecution are the same. Many of these things parallel, and it looks like the court is just saying, let's take a pause here and take a look at that. At the same time, though, interestingly, they seem to be dismissing or not dealing with questions of innocence, because the defense has come up with a lot of issues they've tried to appeal on.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I actually want to read a quote from Robertson's attorney saying that they are confident that an objective review of the science and medical evidence will show there was, in fact, no crime. So what happens next year? Because I know the ultimate objective for Robertson's attorneys is, let's get a new trial. I think
well, his attorney told me today she wants to get in front of a court as soon as possible and get this moving on. But you're going to see a lot more science in this, challenging the shaken baby diagnosis, which has been used to convict a number of people in a number of jurisdictions over the years. But this is going to really put it in the spotlight, trying to make the point that that medical advances now, scientific advances, show that these three particular points of injury that have been used to diagnose this are not always indicative of what really happened. And they're continuing to make the case that this little girl was sick, was very sick. I had a 104.5-degree fever a few days before ultimately ending up in the hospital and dying. So there's a lot they're going to unearth. They've done a lot of this research already, but they are anxious to get this moving.
You talked about the new episode that is out today. You know, over the last 24 hours, I mentioned, right, we spoke yesterday. If folks were watching yesterday, they're watching today, they're saying, wow, this happened fast. It's taken a while, though.
Everything takes a while, but in our world, in the TV world, things have moved rather quickly. You know, we know that our podcast had, you know, some impact on the course of this case. Yesterday we saw the defense file a motion based on something we had revealed. And as I said in this latest episode of our program, we deal with this issue of the Rourke case and him being charged, very similar allegations, and being exonerated.
Lester Holt, it's called The Last Appeal, wherever you get your podcasts out now. It's really incredible. Thank you, Lester.
Great. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it. All right, let's get you over the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, right-wing conspiracy theorist Alex Jones is asking the Supreme Court to pause a $1.4 billion defamation judgment he owes for making false claims that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was a hoax. In the filing, Jones claims the court's involvement is needed to prevent his website, InfoWars, from being sold to the satirical news site The Onion. We've been telling you about this. That sale meant to help fund payments to family members of Sandy Hook victims. Number 2, a Florida judge ruling that the suspect accused of, quote, maliciously starting the January Palisades fire will stay behind bars pending trial. The fire was one of the worst in Southern California history, killing 12 people and destroying thousands of homes and businesses. Number 3, scary new body cam video showing a Florida police officer saving a little boy running in the middle of the road. You can see him here almost get hit by that white car. The officer jumped out of his vehicle, started chasing the boy until he was caught unharmed. The boy apparently manipulated safety devices in his house and ran out. Number 4, people in one town near Boulder are returning home after this massive fire at a shopping center this morning forced an evacuation. Multiple businesses were completely destroyed, and some nearby roads are still closed. Officials investigating the cause. And then number 5, LA Lakers star LeBron James is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks with sciatica on his right side. Sciatica, excuse me, according to a report from ESPN. The Lakers open their season against the Golden State Warriors on October 21st on NBC and Peacock. Sciatica, everybody. It's sciatica. All right, tonight, red flags being raised in the Southwest as measles cases in some states there are on the rise. Health officials saying this is one of the largest measles outbreaks we've seen recently around the Utah-Arizona border. And in just the last 24 hours, South Carolina's health department now saying 2 schools are linked to the measles outbreak in that state. The CDC's latest count shows more than 1,564 measles cases across the country this year. And see all of the purple there? That's the spread in up to 41 states now. I want to bring in Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, how concerned should we be, should folks be, about this kind of persistent uptick we've been seeing in measles cases across the country?
I think it's extremely concerning, Yasmin, because we're seeing these cases not by accident. We know that from some NBC News work done in conjunction with Stanford University, that were pockets of the country. For example, you just talked about Utah. 79% of kindergartners in Washington County, Utah, are vaccinated against the measles. And we've talked about what the numbers that you need to be immune as a community. It's anywhere between 92 and 95% to get that herd immunity to protect against an outbreak. So this is deeply troubling. And as a reminder, measles symptoms can be incredibly widespread. Some of them have a classic fever, a rash that you can see, sore throat, kind of a red tongue. But in general, this can look sometimes like the early stage of any other virus, Yasmin. So it can often go unchecked until it's almost too late.
Let me ask you this. If one is vaccinated against measles, can they still get it if the virus begins to mutate?
Yes, so and it doesn't even have to depend on the mutation of the virus. To be candid with you, it has more to do with the fact that there's just more opportunities for the virus to infect you, even if you're vaccinated. Now, let me be clear. The worst outcomes without a vaccine on board are death, loss of hearing, diseases of the brain that we can see, meningitis, et cetera. So that's very deafness. But if you're vaccinated, you can get infected because there's not that shell of immunity around you. Just think of it as a virus that can have many chances to get you infected.
School children are of most concern. How should school officials, how should public health officials be working with public schools?
Yeah, I just want to point out, you mentioned South Carolina. The Department of Public Health actually put out a warning that anyone who's not vaccinated will actually be asked to stay home and have virtual learning. So this is a critical, if you have an unvaccinated child in cases that you know of or suspicious of, keep the child at home to keep yourself and the household safe.
Dr. Kavita Patel, thank you. I appreciate it. When we come back, one woman admitting to trying to poison her partner with antifreeze, why she says she did it, plus the messy situation across one Illinois highway, what took crews hours to clean up. Welcome back. A Connecticut woman is out of jail on bond tonight, but facing attempted murder charges after admitting to poisoning her estranged partner. This is Kristen Hogan. You see her here. She had a child with her partner, but things took an ugly turn back in August. Her partner, who police aren't naming, told authorities he hosted a family dinner and put some leftover wine in the fridge. He had a glass a few days later and ended up in the hospital really sick. He survived, and Hogan quickly confessed, telling detectives she put some of the active ingredient from antifreeze into the wine bottle, saying that she, quote, never intended to kill him, but just wanted to make him sick as payback for him being mentally abusive. Hogan's lawyers telling NBC News she'll plead not guilty. Stephanie Gosk is all over this one. What do we know here?
It's a weird one. You know, all the details we know about this case, Yasmin, are from her cell phone and the search warrant that and the arrest warrant from the police. They lay out the case, and there are some really interesting things that they discovered on her cell phone, according to this arrest warrant. Among them, that in the days before the poisoning, that she had actually searched for poisonous chemicals on her phone, including monoethylene glycol, which is the active ingredient in antifreeze. And you might think antifreeze smells funny, it looks funny. Yeah. That's because they've added stuff to it. Because monoethylene glycol is odorless, it's colorless, it has a slightly sweet taste to it, but it is poisonous. And it can start
the pure form.
Yep, it can start with nausea, then it goes to potentially convulsions and kidney failure. And her estranged partner was in the hospital on dialysis following the drinking of this wine. The phone also revealed that the phone itself had been in, or at least the immediate vicinity of the estranged partner's home as well. And according to this arrest warrant, she had told police that she was in Rhode Island with her family. Now, this is just one side of the story. We have not heard what her case is, but her lawyer did speak after the hearing today, and this is what he had to say.
This case is not what it seems. There's a lot more to this story. We can't really get into more details than that. What we do know is Kristen is a loving mother. She cares about her kids more than anything, and she's looking forward to keeping this case moving and resolving it.
She has not entered a plea yet in this case. She is out on bail, and she's going to be staying with her parents as this trial unfolds.
Lots of twists and turns there.
Yeah, certainly are.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right, coming up, some rare comments tonight from Victoria Beckham about her life in the spotlight, how she says she lost, quote, all sense of reality. Victoria Beckham is opening up about how she lost all sense of reality as she became a global phenomenon while also struggling with an eating disorder.
I had no control over what was being written about me, pictures that were being taken. And I suppose I wanted to control that, you know? I could control it with the clothing, I could control my weight. And I was controlling it in an incredibly unhealthy way.
So that is in this new documentary today on Netflix, taking an intimate look at the many layers of her life and her career. Victoria Beckham, also known as Posh Spice, was thrust into the spotlight in the mid-90s when she became a member of the hugely popular Spice Girls. She says during that time, she became very good at lying. Eating disorders, they are a growing concern across the world. In 2021, 16 million people experienced an eating disorder. Chloe Malas is following this story for us. There was this moment when she was a part of the Spice Girls and was this hugely popular star, new to the scene, and incredibly young, by the way, where she had just had a baby. And she talks about this, and she was weighed live on television, like months after having had a child, right? And you can only imagine the pressure that she was under during that time. We face that on a very, very teeny tiny scale.
Sure.
Right? Imagine what Victoria faces every day, Victoria Beckham, and faced back then as a Spice Girl.
I mean, she has been so incredibly private for years. So to have her open up now, just a couple years after David Beckham, her husband's documentary on Netflix that was hugely successful, we're learning so much. And there are a lot of celebrities that have come out and talked about having had eating disorders. You have Kesha, you have Hilary Duff, you've had Taylor Swift talk about issues that she's had. And so, you know, now we're hearing about Victoria, who, like you said, was this one of the first pop stars, right? I mean, she paved the way for people like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and these girl bands. And for her to say, look, when I was at the height of my fame, I was dealing with so much. And this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what she reveals in this 3-part docuseries.
It is so huge, I have to say, having had an eating disorder myself in my teens. I think having someone like that come out publicly, someone that so many people admired and continue to admire, and say, truthfully, this is what I was dealing with and the pressures, it just kind of takes away the pressure, the taboo of talking about mental health disorders in that way, right, publicly.
Well, what I think is just so relatable and wonderful, and thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that about you either.
Doesn't have to be a confessional.
Right, but, you know, this is real, right?
Yeah,
this is what this is all about.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, breaking down that third wall and being really honest. It's just, we don't hear from her. She doesn't do interviews,
No,
right?
she doesn't.
She doesn't talk about her personal life. She doesn't talk about her family. She didn't really share much at all in David Beckham's documentary, right?
Yeah.
All we saw was the dancing to Islands in the Stream, right? Which is so lovely to see behind their relationship.
Yeah.
This is huge, and she can help so many people by talking about what she went through. She also talks about how she was not popular growing up, like you might think, because she was Posh Spice.
Yeah.
She said that she was a loner and she lived on the fringe. She also talked about how hard it was to be accepted by the fashion community.
Yeah, her fashion line.
Launching her line, and how she always felt like an outsider, how shy she is around the paparazzi. And speaking of just what she said about her eating disorder, talking about her daughter Harper, telling her to be who you are, unapologetically you, and how she instills that every single day. And as a mother of 2 sons, that's what I hope to do as well, to tell them, be yourself, and also tell me when you're having a problem. And it sounds like Victoria Beckham, she hid a lot of stuff for so many years, and now you can just tell that she's really happy to be cathartic.
She seems more settled.
And to reveal this. It's a different side of Victoria that we've never seen.
Chloe Malas, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, if you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, there are resources listed here that can certainly help. All right, NBC covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local. From our Southern Bureau, Publix says it'll now allow customers to openly carry guns at its Florida grocery stores after a judge overturned the state's ban last month. Publix says it follows all federal, state, and local laws, and that it will call police if any customer creates a threatening experience, gun or not. From our Midwest Bureau, an overturned truck spilling over 40,000 pounds of applesauce on a highway in Illinois. It took crews almost 4 hours to clean up the mess. Fortunately, Nobody was hurt. Also from our Midwest Bureau, 'tis the season of runaway spooky inflatables. Ohio police say they got a ton of calls reporting a pumpkin on the loose in their neighborhood. You can see it here. Police tried and failed to deflate it before eventually just wrangling it into the backseat. I believe it was, in fact, though, returned to its rightful owners. All right, still to come. Could some athletes soon bet on pro sports? The new moves from the NCAA. We'll be right back. The NCAA today moving closer to letting college athletes and athletic department staff bet on professional sports. The rule would go into effect on November 1st if the committees for Division II and III also vote to approve. The committee chair says the members are concerned about the risks associated with sports gambling, but that lifting the restrictions evens the playing field, so to speak, because non-athlete students are already allowed to bet on professional sports. Sam Brock is joining us now with more on this. Walk us through how this came to be, what could actually come from it. It feels like the reins are being taken off here.
It's an important distinction to make here, Yasmin, which is that college students are not being allowed to gamble on college games. They're being allowed to gamble on professional sports, which, by the way, to your point, is exactly what all of their other students and colleagues are able to do right now. There are still guardrails, but as it pertains to athletes betting on sporting events that they're actually participating in, as you'll see here, you cannot bet on college sports if you're a student athlete, or anyone in college for that matter. You cannot share information about college competitors with bettors. You cannot have advertising and sponsorships of NCAA championships by betting sites in the college space, right? So all of that makes sense. But I would also add there are 39 states right now in the United States, plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., that allow for legalized sports gambling. So not even every single state allows it. But of those that do, there's generally a mandatory minimum of 21 years old. That's the threshold where you'd be able to bet. So for many of these college students, they can't even bet to begin with if they're under the age of 21.
You've also got new opportunities with this happening as well, right? Name, likeness deals. I mean, a whole kind of open market for these college athletes.
There was an absolute sea change a few years ago. This was a Supreme Court decision in 2021, Alston, in which the Supreme Court found that the NCAA was violating antitrust law by not allowing student athletes to benefit, to maximize their educational benefits, which paved the way for NIL, which is short for name, image, and likeness, essentially being able to make as much money as they possibly can off of their own branding. Okay, then you have the transfer portal, which allows them to move from one year to the next without sitting out a single year, to be able to go to another place where they can maximize earnings. It sort of made the economics of college sports something that it had never been until that point. We spoke with Michael McCann, who is a professor at the University of New Hampshire, their Sports Institute Law School there, specifically about this idea that NIL was also a good example where if other college people can do things, other students can make money if they're, in different spaces in life, musicians, why would athletes not be able to do the same thing? Take a quick listen.
A college musician or a college actor can make money for the use of their name, image, and likeness and other identifying traits. So, why can't a classmate who plays the sport do so? So it goes back to that idea of treating college athletes like their classmates.
So this is all about fairness and equity. I will say that the Administrative Committee for Division I has signed off on college student athletes being able to gamble on professional sports. D2 and D3 would have to follow. Their votes are expected later this month. If that does happen, then officially they can gamble on professional sports on November 1st.
Sam Brock, fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. All right, that is a wrap for this hour. A reminder, do not miss our new podcast. Here's the Scoop, wherever you get your podcasts, out now. Coverage picks up here right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.